You might have it muted until the presentation starts. See now?
Mm-hmm.
And can you see your name on there? There you go.
Okay, I think it's about time to start. Just doing a little housekeeping here. Make sure everything is working on our end. And so far it shows that we have 43 participants. It is 1 o'clock, and we do want to make sure that we adhere to the time schedule. We'll have just a little bit of opening and so forth to get started. So just checking to make sure that the chat is working on my end so I can see if there's any questions through the chat device within Zoom. So just to get started, thank you for attending. Thank you for your business. My name is Kyle Kepner. I am the CEO of Gilling Data Management, and I will be leading the Tuesday session, today's session on SEs or standard evaluations for beginners. And then also I'll be leading the session for tomorrow on the study list. You can see on my screen here, I have the schedule for the webinar week. Thank you so much for all of those of you who are in attendance. I can say that this has been one of the key topics as I travel around and meet with clients, that clients would really like to have a lot more training on ARM. And so during this erratic and somewhat unprecedented week or last 2 weeks, we thought it'd be a great way to get in front of our clients, bring a little knowledge about using ARM, and then also bringing some efficiency as a lot of us are in our homes right now. So knowing that, we are going to talk a lot about SEs today, standard evaluations, and how they can greatly help you guys in your organization, whether you are a sponsor or whether you are a CRO or as I would call a contract research officer, those that are performing the trials for the sponsors, and maybe even trialists, even within a group that handles, which is a sponsor and a trialist doing internal research. So one of the key questions that I get when I travel and train, especially for in-person trainings with whether it's companies or in front of groups, one of the key questions that I get asked is, how can I standardize my data? We've been performing research for many years, especially on a particular protocol, and it seems like every year we get the data back and it is inconsistent, and even some groups get to a point where they literally throw their hands in the air and say they just want to start all over because they don't have the ability to summarize the data. And as you would know, just like if you had paper in front of you and you tried to sort the data by using paper and pencil and doing calculations, if calculations or raw data is not in the same format, it would be somewhat time consuming to summarize that data. And knowing this, it's the same way with a computer. Computers have a hard time deciphering when data is similar, but it isn't exactly the same. So knowing this, we have what we call standard evaluations, of which I greatly and highly recommend that an organization use these for internal and external research. One other tip, just while we're doing this webinar, Matt, can you verify that you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. There was it actually led right into my next comment, is that please everyone, make sure you have your device muted, and I would prefer, I think it'd just be easier if you guys use the chat feature, and I've got that open on a different screen. I'm gonna maybe pull that across to another screen here. So if for those that cannot hear, it might mean that your audio device, your speaker system is not set up correctly. I can see that, and they wouldn't be able to hear me, right? So Matt, if you want to maybe, I don't know if there's any recommendations you could have for these groups, but it looks like others are saying that they can hear okay. So hopefully those that can't hear, they have the ability to help their system. So
I have an option in my lower left corner where there's a microphone. If you click the little arrow next to it, it lets me choose my device, both for the microphone and for the speakers. So maybe just check which device is your speaker to make sure it's pointed to the one you want to hear from and that you have your volume turned up.
yeah, the key thing is probably need to type that because they can't hear you.
Right, good point.
So why don't you go ahead and type a message there for the group. Matt Elsinger is our lead support GDM representative, and he performed the webinar, yesterday's webinar. So he's helping me out today, watching, also maybe texting me if there's questions. So anyways, I would prefer that that everyone use the chat if possible. So why don't we dive into SEs and what they are, how to create them, how to store them, and how to utilize them in the future. So I'm going to just open up ARM here. I had it already open in the background. And I think one of the easiest methods to creating an SE is to actually open up a trial. Open up a trial that you have data for. Not that the data is used, but at least it's a good starting point, a reference point as to what you would want to see in the future to help build that consistency. So I'm going to just go ahead and I had rebuilt my study list prior to this, so I've got some studies here, whether they're protocols or trials. I'm going to open up or just look at my trials, and I'm going to open up this trial here, this 2020 tutorial, and it's going to bring me to my assessment data editor. And so as I mentioned, this trial already has data, and it's very much irrelevant in this case as to what we're going to discuss, because really all we care about is this information right here. This is really all we want to know, what we've done, document it, and understand. And so I'm going to actually change my view under the properties panel here. I'm going to change my view to all fields. And really it's, okay, is this pretty standard? Is this all of the information that I would like for this type of assessment? And so knowing this, you can see here that I have particular information that I would want to, number one, not have to type again in the future. Number two, if I would want to save my employees' work, or even those that have used or have done trials for me in the future, or will do them in the future and have done them in the past, and even internal, but also is to help build consistency. So knowing this, I may want to standardize the way that I take a particular assessment. So I've been essentially, I've taken this data, and I want to take this type of data the same way in the future. So what I can do is I can actually save this information and reuse it. Some of it I may not want to use, but I can actually reuse it over and over again. I can actually save this information, these two columns together, and I can then utilize it as a multi-column SE. So that's actually the first thing that I wanted to do, is I want to create this SE. Please note right here, these were not created using an SE. There's no SE name or SE description. First, I'm going to, within the column, anywhere within the column, I can click anywhere. I'm going to do a right click. So I performed a right click to bring up my options. And within my options, I have an Export SE. When I click on this option, I'm going to export out my standard evaluation. So I click on the Export SE, and it brings me through a wizard. And the first question of the wizard is, please specify the assessment column numbers to export. What that's asking me is, if I would like to export a multiple column SE, I would need to specify the columns that I want to export. I can do this in multiple ways. I can either hand type, and I just added in a space, and I'm now stating that I would like to export all 4 columns. Or I believe I can use a comma if I so choose also. Or I can actually go ahead and I can click on the column headings on the column number at the very top. So if I would like to have just these 2 columns, I can then say and choose those 2 columns. Once I click OK, it's going to ask me another question. And please understand that this is not going to export out the data. This is just a reference at the bottom of what the data was, but it will not export out the actual data itself. So I have now chosen that I would like to export the first 2 columns. And now I have the ability, if I so choose, to specify the assessment data header lines to export, the actual header line numbers to export. So maybe these aren't the ones that I want for sure. And ARM tries to use some logic to default to the ones that you may want. I have a preference to just open up to all fields. So I can do this in a couple ways. I can click on my properties panel on the right here, and I have a shortcut, or really a quick view that is all fields. Or I can go to my visible columns, and I can make any of these visible that I would like, or just make them all visible. So I clicked on the show all and apply. Now it gives me a better opportunity to make sure that I choose all of the headers that I would like to essentially copy into my export. So I'm noticing here, I have a choice. And as an organization, you may want to get together with all of the trialists, the research directors, really anyone that would have a say in summarizing the data or taking the data. You want to bring in everyone within your organization to help make these SEs, because this is a good example of, would you, in your SE, would you want this to be tied to a particular weed, this Palmer amaranth, or would you not want to have this particular weed in this SE? If the standard evaluation is based upon any weed, you would not want to include the weed in reference for that SE, because then that weed information is going to show up every time you use this SE. So I believe this weed is probably going to be the same as any other weed, whether it's, cocklebur, and I realize that we've got people from really around the world that may call them different common names. So, there's cocklebur, common lamb's quarter, and so forth. I believe that this assessment would be the same no matter what. I believe that this is a soybean type of SE. So I want to take a rating, this crop phygen, general phytotoxicity rating on this type of soybean, because I believe that that is set for that type of crop. So whatever I include in my header rows, you can see the numbers here changing as I select them. Those are the assessment header rows that are going to copy into the SE. So please take note that I will not be receiving the pest type within my SE if I use it in the future. So as I look down through my different assessment headers, and it does not matter if you choose one that has 0 information. It will just bring in nothing if you accidentally use that, or and click on that. It'll bring in a blank cell. So I believe that, yep, I want to use soybean. The variety, I may never want to include that, but you can see that it was blank. My description, I want to include that. I want to include my part rated, rating type, rating unit, because that's what builds consistency from year to year. My sample size, my number of subsamples. But I would not want to include this data entry date, or even if I had an assessed by person. I may not want to include this because it's going to copy through. And the reason I wouldn't include it, especially because I'm in a trial when I'm creating this. You don't have to be in a trial to create a standard evaluation. You can be in a protocol. You can open up a blank trial and you could start entering the assessments that way and export an SE. That is up to you. I just tried to do it for visual purposes so that it may help relate to the client base that is watching. So I look down here and, I really don't want to include anything else. I've got a rating timing. I probably want to include that for a pest stand count because maybe this is my pre-emerge stand count. So I have these, and for extra credit, And this is hopefully going to be a webinar, I believe, sometime next week. For extra credit, why would you want to include an assessment data header that is blank? Granted, I wasn't expecting anyone to answer. I just wanted to give some time. But if you notice, this is color-coded. This is color-coded for a reason. The reason is that there's a study rule. And my study rule that I have in there is that if there's assessment data, I am requiring that there is a rating date for that assessment data. So that study rule is enacted because I have assessment data entered below, and therefore in my standard evaluation, I would want to be sure to include that assessment data header because it will also bring forward the study rules if I so choose. So as you build these standard assessments or standard evaluations, you may want to determine what type of study rules that you would like to use within your standard evaluations, and then bring those across too, because that's actually a huge time saver when bringing in standard evaluations and taking assessment data. So I have all of my header lines specified that I want to send out. I click the OK button. And now, please note this path. This is a very important path within ARM. I'm going to save my SE in this, this path here. And I'm going to name it a specific name that I want. But please note this path. The reason for it is that you have the ability to, and I'm going to just show just these, you have the ability to send these 3 SEs to anyone within your organization or to those that are taking assessments for you, whether it's a CRO or even a trialist within your organization. So they're going to be saved in this path. So I already have this one saved. So maybe I'll put in the same information just so you can see it live. And I can name this what I would like. We'd like to keep this about 12 characters wide or less. So I'm just going to call this, so it's pest stand count, crop phytogen, and then I'm just going to call it webinar, for W for webinar. And I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now I have the option to put in that description. So that's what's going to go in this row right here, what this description is. So maybe this is a pest stand count. Actually, I'll do something like this. And Pygen. And go ahead and put that in as my SE. So as Matt had mentioned yesterday, green is good. Green means that you're success, you can move forward. It means go. And so I have successfully exported this SE. Now I had seen that there was a question on the, and I think Matt had been taking care of it. Yes, as of right now, we are not actually exporting any of the raw data. You would not want to export that. And you'll see that when I demonstrate here moving forward how to bring them into a trial or even into a protocol. I click the OK button, and I have mine set up so that it automatically brings in the location of where it went, just for a purpose. For instance, to do the next SE as a group, maybe we determine that we want to do this SE here, hit export, or click export, and it says just this column. So now I'm going to do this a little bit quicker, just to show how much quicker you can actually export these SEs. I am satisfied with everything that I have here, but maybe I do want this to be just for Palmer. I'm going to go ahead and bring that in because it's a particular type of control rating. And I'm going to actually call it this. So it's fine. I'm going to just click on it and I'm going to replace, let's just say % control and click OK. And then to even go quicker, this is the exact one that I want. And it's number 4. I want to view all fields. Oops. And I could do that hide empty fields if I'd like, but then I would also lose the one that had my study rule. So I'm going to do all. And for this one, maybe I don't need this. Oh wait, it shouldn't. I shouldn't want all 4. So let me. I only want 4. Okay. There we go. And so I only want to see the information for this column. And like I said, it doesn't matter if it's blank, that's fine. But I'm going to go ahead and export that out. And I'm going to call that grain weight because that's what that is for my assessment. Green means good. And go ahead and close that. Okay, so now that we have these SEs exported, we can use them in different ways. And let's pretend that this trial is still continuing. If I would like, I can import them into my assessment data editor. So I could, anywhere in this column, I can do a right click and I can insert SE from file. So this is going to explain about that data question, because now if I want to, I can bring in this assessment and it will now fill in all of the information that I had chosen for that assessment. Notice how there is not a weed here. The Palmer Amaranth did not come with. I could then go ahead and fill in the rest of the information that would change if I so choose. And I could then bring in a rating. I could put in my rating dates. I can really fill in that assessment as needed. And it would not really affect the SE because really it's just now an SE, and you can see now that there's the SE that was chosen. So if I want, I can bring in another SE, and that would be that % control. And now I also have the weed that was associated with that SE. So that's a good visual as to how, and you really as an organization, you have to decide how detail is in your SEs and name them and kind of code them appropriately, or how general you would like to have the SEs. So you can insert them that way, or you can, what we have here is the SE definitions. If you would like, and notice how in my trial, now that I inserted SEs, it automatically added those 2 SEs into the SE definitions tab, which then actually builds a list to utilize within the assessment data editor. And granted, I haven't imported that harvest SE yet. So I'm going to just go ahead and insert a repeating section. And in my SE definitions tab, I can just do a right click anywhere. I can click anywhere here, right click and insert SE from file. And let's bring in that raw grain weight. So really this list builds the SEs so that you can then create a drop-down list in the assessment data header. So if I go back to my assessment data editor here, and I go to a new column name, I now have options. I have my pest stand and FIGEN rating, my control rating. Notice on the right, it gives me a preview of what that assessment is going to entail, the number of columns, and any of the assessment data headers that have information, they are now listed also. As I change these, notice how this went to one assessment data column. For this SE, there's multiple assessment data columns. So I now have this list. If I would like, I can choose from this list. And now it will fill in that assessment data, the assessment data columns for that SE. I can then bring in another SE and so forth. So it's just a quick way to bring in consistent data columns, especially the base, the structure of the data columns. And it also is a huge time saver because now all of that information that may have been hand entered previously is now automated. And really, in thinking about the taking assessments and then building a protocol, you would be much better off to have this SE definition filled out within the protocol, because when the protocol is sent to the trialist, or the trialist utilizes that protocol, then the standard assessment files, the actual SEs that are stored in the GDM def folder, those will actually carry forward into the protocol as it's sent. And also, as a trial is created, the SEs will then also carry forward into that trial so that they're available. So understanding SEs as a tool to build consistency, a tool to really save a lot of time, a tool to bring the organization together to make really one decision and make that decision long term, it can greatly impact the productivity of that organization. And really the key point here is that if you're a trialist and the sponsor is sending you a protocol with an SE in it, please use it. They have saved you a lot of time if you use them. They have provided instruction. They've provided structure. Really, it's they've really done, did you a favor by providing those. And as a sponsor, please provide them to the CROs, the trialists, because they should want them. They should want to know exactly how you want the information structured and saved. And you would actually greatly appreciate receiving data from all of your sources that would all be the same. So that way you had the ability, to summarize the data easily and not have to do any conversions, not have to, create additional columns to standardize the way that they did their ratings. Sometimes a rating might be 1 to 5, and another group sends it as 1 to 10. Some may do it as a percentage instead of a rating. This is a great way to really structure and instruct how to perform a particular assessment. The other point that I want to make is that you may a trialist may not use every single SE. I would include all of the SEs for really any type of assessment that may actually occur in the trial. That's one of the questions that we receive a lot is, well, we don't know for sure what they're going to do or they're going to take because we don't know how many times they're going to have to take a stand count, a weed count, and so forth. That's one of the benefits of the standard evaluations and this SE definitions editor, because now you can go ahead and put in those SEs and they can use them as many times as the trial needs them to be used. So knowing that, if you can get in a rhythm of and really in the habit of creating SEs and sending them out company wide, then you would have an option to fill out your protocols easily with these SEs. And so I'm just going to demonstrate that now. The reason I went into a trial is because I was hoping that it would bring more understanding as to what it was. And a lot of times, even with creating study rules, a lot of times it's easier to start in a trial because all of the fields are available, and it's a little bit easier to understand. Excuse me. So that's why I started in a trial. But you can also do these in a protocol. So I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go ahead and save it. That's fine in case we want to reference anything previously. And I'm going to filter for my protocols. I'm going to open up a tutorial here. And I'm going to see this SE. This is, kind of what I had utilized to create the trial. And so I've got a protocol. I don't have any assessment data information because it's in a protocol. So really this protocol is ready to go. And you don't have to put in assessment data headers then if you don't want to, because you have the instruction in the SE definitions tab. So as a trialist, they would have the ability in their trial to go to the SE name. Since it's in the SE definitions, it's now available here. And they essentially could fill out their protocol if they wanted before they create the trial, or they can wait till the trial to bring in their data columns. And as you can see, it fills it in. Or I can be really lazy. If I already have a protocol that already has SEs that are very common, if I already have a protocol that's ready, I'm just going to, for demonstration, I'm going to create a new protocol. And as you can see, my SE definitions tab is blank. Oops, click on something I shouldn't have. And I would have the opportunity, if I so choose, to use this merge from study button in the properties panel. So if I wanted, and I'm going to demonstrate this now. If I wanted all of the SE protocol that I did in this merge from study button. So when I click on the merge from study, the study list appears, and you can see that it's filtered by protocols because I'm in a protocol when I click the study that has the SEs, the protocol. So I'm not actually merging the protocols. What I'm doing is I'm taking specific information from one protocol and putting it into another. It's going to stay in that protocol. It's not going to take it away. It's just now going to be located in both protocols. So really, I'm doing a copy and paste function essentially by utilizing this merge from study button. And if I click on OK, I have the option to choose the information that I would like from this protocol. And granted, we haven't talked about the header section or the treatments, any of the tasks or assessment data. We don't need that. But what I do want is I want some information from that protocol description, because it's where my SE definitions editor is located. So I want to grab information from my protocol description, and I could bring in all, but I don't want to do that. I want to bring in just my SE definitions. So what happened is that ARM went to the 2020 protocol, or tutorial, I think it's called, and it went and found all of the SEs that I had included in my in that protocol, and brought them into this protocol. So essentially, this is an easy way, a great way to utilize the SEs. If I were to create a protocol, now the same option occurs, and I can then, really utilize any of the SEs that I would like, and I could fill my protocol that way. I've got a dual monitor, so it's not recognizing the difference between the two, but I can then go ahead and bring in these SEs, and I could, if I wanted, I could, go ahead and delete this this information if I wanted. You really can change them as you would like. But if you can imagine being a trialist and having these SEs come through, and just knowing that the best thing to do is make sure that your SE and description assessment data editors are available, make sure that you can see them, and you have the ability to just click on this drop down and the list of SEs appears. And really they're approved SEs. The approved SEs are, they're working, or they are the ones that are approved, and they work, with such ease that that's a great benefit to the trialist. And then understanding that as a trialist, this is really the instruction. This is what you want to do. You want to utilize these SEs, so that way when the sponsor is summarizing data across locations, then they can then utilize your data as if it was in-house, and also your data as a bigger part of all of the data. Then that sponsor then has the efficiency of summarizing the data. So with that, I see there's some questions here. I'm just going to look and see quick. Yes, so there was a question. I don't know if everybody's reading the chat. There's a question of if, when selecting a multi-column, does it insert new assessment columns or copy over? It should always insert. We've made it a point within ARM to try to never, ever copy over any of the information that you already have. So you would always want to, or it should always insert an additional column when inserting that SE. The other point I wanted to make is that we do, when we think about these part rated and also these sample size and collection basis, I do want to put in a little bit of a shout out to the references. We do have within ARM the ability to open up a PDF, which helps describe what the sample size, collection basis, and reporting basis is. And essentially it has a lot to do with subsamples, on instructing how to do subsamples. And this is a question that we get a lot when it comes to SEs. And do you want to include those, and how do you instruct and provide structure for subsampling and so forth? So I do want to give a little bit of a point of emphasis on this reference here. The other point of emphasis that I want to make is that please go to our video tutorials. We've been really building these up in the last couple of years. It's a great starting point. If you go to gdmdata.com, resources, oops, my mouse is going a little crazy. There we go. Video tutorials. And here we have the different sections. about getting started. So this is key for those of you that are really new to ARM, or you're going to have an employee that's starting ARM. Have them watch these getting started with ARM tutorial videos. We try to keep them, 5 to 8 minutes or less. You can see the amount of time here, but this will greatly impact their efficiency and use of ARM from the very beginning, and the ability to go through the other parts, the setting up a protocol, the conducting a trial, collecting data with the TDC Act. So if you are a tablet data collector user, you can then go in here and you can see how to get started, photos and so forth. But I just wanted to emphasize that we do have help on our website, and just even reporting basics. So please go to those videos. We do trainings throughout the year. We've got some users that have used ARM for 20 plus years, and we still seem to teach them something about ARM and some tips and some tricks. So with that, are there any questions? I'm just watching the chat. Matt, did you see any questions that I didn't address or need to be addressed? You can always just pop in and talk too if you want.
I think everything's been covered that I've seen.
Okay. So I think there was a little bit issue with the internet. Did I crack up a lot?
Not too often. It would go for maybe 30 seconds, but we could still kind of follow you, so it wasn't too bad at all. And then it would come back, and it was just fine. So.
Okay. So hopefully the video, because we are going to. I think you had mentioned that in the chat that we're going to release this on our website. Hopefully that it wasn't too bad. I don't know what was going on with my internet, but it seems like a lot of people had it. So. But anyways, let's see here. There's a question. Do you offer any wrapper that can be used in R or some other language? Matt, you would have to answer that.
We don't have anything yet where you can kind of customize and run your own R code. We are adding some features where you can at least export the R code that ARM uses. So we do run R in the background and a lot of the analysis, and we're adding buttons to print to R, so that way you can see our code and tweak it and use it as you wish.
Okay. I didn't understand the wrapper part, so I could have probably answered that, but I don't know some of the technical terms, so. But yeah, so so far we'll leave it open for a little bit for more questions. If somebody has a question about SEs, how to utilize them. But many thanks for your business and your time. And until tomorrow, hopefully for those of you that can attend, hopefully we can. Okay, it says here, would you consider a create protocol from trial functionality? That's a good question. I don't know if we would.
You can, if you're in a trial, you can save as to a protocol, I believe, and it would kind of generate a protocol from the trial you have.
Huh, I just learned something myself. So if I close this, and you go File, Save As. Ha. So then it would take all of the information from the trial that relates to the protocol and then create a protocol.
Yep, kind of reverse engineers it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good question, Jamil. You're welcome, Jamil. Oh, The good question, Baron. Thank you. I did not show that. So there are, yeah, I apologize. There are already SEs available within the trial that were supplied by a major sponsor. So if I choose the SE name dropdown, then it will go to a personal list, and I've got quite a few in here for a personal list. But if I display the master list, then there are a lot of different options for SEs that are already pre-built by a major sponsor. I think there's probably close to 800 of them. And yeah, it may seem a little bit, overwhelming with the number of options that you have, but you can always do the filtering. So if you wanted to see a pest severity, you could then filter by pest severity, and then you would see the list of just the pest severities. So yeah, for those of you that have left already, I apologize. I don't think we've lost too many, but yeah, we've got a whole list of them built in, and you can see how the preview on the right shows all of the different, oops, wrong button, there we go, all of the different assessment columns that are included for that multi-column standard evaluation. So thanks for that. I'm still watching the chat. And then if you wanted to add that, you can always add that to personal, that one, that FO60. So I could display my personal, and now the FO60 is in my personal. And then if I choose that, it's now an SE that's now available in my assessment data editor as an option to choose. If my SE was showing. And there it is. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so there was also, and this is getting a little bit advanced, the reason for the SE groups. So the group numbers is, we're probably actually going to explain more for the study rules. That's the way I see them being used, is that if you wanted to have consistent across entries, then you could then, these groups here really kind of keep those assessment columns together. And if you had a date and you knew that you were always going to have the same date, you can put in a study rule that will have them consistent across that group, essentially consistent across those assessment columns. But also those groups, if you wanted to delete a column, it'll prompt you and ask if you want to delete the whole group and so forth. But it really also then shows if that assessment is with another group. I'm trying to think if there's other reasons. Matt, you might want to pop in if you can think of other reasons to have that group.
No, really, it's mostly an arbitrary number. The number itself will never matter. Really, it's just the functionality or the tool ARM uses to know that you're part of a group. So there you have columns 5 and 6 are both part of group number 7. So if you were to try to delete column number 5, ARM will realize, since there's several columns with that same SE group number, it knows that those are linked, and it'll ask you if you want to perform that action on both of those columns together.
Right. There's a question, Matt. We're trying to create templates. Okay, can we make things like protocol instructions unlocked so we have a single file used?
I think we'll have to brainstorm that protocol instructions. That's a common question. That's that read-only part of the trial. We have it locked down now because we want it to be kind of a read only. These were instructions from the protocol writer and therefore cannot be changed. But it's a common question because there are some scenarios where people want that unlocked. So we might have to do some brainstorming on situations or ways that we can make that accessible or changeable in some fashion.
All right. There was also a question about can we create a study rule? So it would be the strict SE selection. And I'd have to do some more testing to see how strict it is, because I think the trialists can still insert an SE on their own. But you can put in a study rule that says strict SE selection. But then I believe that it enforces that the SE is in the SE definitions tab. So that's what that one is right there. And there's a lot of questions on study rules. I'm rather surprised. I'm very excited about the interest because that was, I believe, one topic that we didn't have time for this week. So I think we should most definitely have a session on study rules and make sure that the group understands what those are and so forth. So great questions, though. We're here. We're here to help. Always be willing to contact your representative to get that local support, and they'll be able to answer questions. If they can't answer them, they'll come to us. Just like some of these questions I might not have been able to answer, like that protocol one. There's a lot of functionality within ARM, and Matt has, I think, seen most everything, I believe, right, Matt? And I think
I could pretend to say that, but then every training we're at, I learned something from one of those people that have seen it for 20 years, and then I say I have to admit that I didn't know everything yet. So
yeah, I feel like I'm getting to fairly close to the top. And that save as protocol, that one was really enlightening to me. That was pretty good. So any other questions? Hopefully I didn't miss anybody's questions in the chat. Tomorrow is going to be the study list. I think that's one of our most underutilized features of ARM. We're going to be covering that. And yeah, with that, I think I haven't seen any more questions come through. So I'd like to, again, thank you for your attention, your time. And yeah, please stay well, stay safe. And until tomorrow, if I talk with you guys tomorrow, please practice some of these lessons that you've learned today, and hopefully bring some value back to your company, your organization, and really push the use of standard evaluations. They're very valuable, and yeah, I think they can really work wonders for your organization. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.